to Growing Up in Easton. Today is September 13th, 2023. My name is Priscilla Almquist-Olsen, your host, and today is was the meet and greet of my class, Oliver Ames High School class 1960, at the Easton Historical Society and Museum this morning. And I snatched two of my classmates to come and share their stories of growing up in Easton. Thank you. Lela Melendi Pierce is to my direct left, and then Arlene Johnson Robinson is here, and I am just delighted. It's great to see you. Lela and I have been on the reunion committee together, and Arlene just made these wonderful tarts for our meet and greet. And anyway, we're having such a wonderful time reminiscing. So let's do some more of that. So Lela, tell me, what are some of your earliest memories of growing up in Easton?
Okay. One of my earliest memories growing up in Easton was walking to the Unionville School, walking to school, walking home for lunch, back again, and back home. And during that time, we'd walk to the school, and Mrs. Goff would have a big brass bell, and you'd best be in your seats. And the seats back then were fastened to the floor with an inkwell. So it's one of my memories.
And you know, didn't Norman Rockwell make a painting of a boy behind a girl, and or he took her pigtails and dipped them in the inkwell.
Yeah.
But those inkwells, yeah. And then we had wooden pens with a metal tip that we would dip into the inkwell, and then we had these little books with lines on them, and we would practice our penmanship.
Well, we also had Mr. Crow, the Reinhardt writing teacher, that came in every month, and the class was all supposed to do their very best in order to get a gold seal, I think it was.
It was.
But that was a monthly occasion. I remember we had to draw things in the air and then do it on paper, and we would be graded by Mr. Crow.
You remember his name?
Oh
my goodness!
I thought he was so impressive because he always came in with a dark blue suit, and he seemed just so knowledgeable about writing. It was very impressive.
So, Arlene, what are some of your early memories?
Well, I grew up on William Street, and I just could walk to everything. I walked to school, I walked to downtown. There was a First National, and everybody knew you by name. I knew all of my neighbors. It was a very ethnic neighborhood. People got along great. I never felt one bit challenged or unsafe. Everything was very safe. The neighborhood was comfortable, and everybody knew you, so you really tried to toe the mark.
So you were part of Sweetville, right?
That was Sweetville, yes. We had a few Irish people and
The
some
Keegan.
Portuguese, and
Yeah.
there was some Italians. The Matranos were next door, and everybody had their own ethnic origins, but they also had, they were very Americanized.
Mm. And so Sweetville extended on the other side of Main
Yes,
Street
it
too.
did.
So Linden Street, Home Street, all of those streets up
Jenny
there.
Lind, yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, my mother was born on Jenny Lind,
Oh.
in the back room of 12, number 12.
Really?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah. So anyway, we all walked to school, and we all walked home for lunch, right?
Yes.
We had 1 hour, and there were patrol boys that would be at the crosswalks, so that you, not that there was much traffic, but they were there.
And I remember that I think it was 6th grade, they finally let the girls be traffic safety patrol officers. I think we were patrol girls and patrol boys. And my station was at the corner of Holland Court and William Street.
Well, you must have been my patrol officer then. But then you could kind of go up Howland Court and play in the playground for a good 10 minutes before off we went into our school.
And do you remember having to go to the Rock and get the erasers clean.
Oh, slam them like mad.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Lela, did you have a big rock into your school in Unionville?
No, we did not have that. What Mrs. Goff, the teacher at Unionville School, had was a big piano. And if you misbehaved, she would make you go under the piano.
Under?
Under the piano. She would say, get under the piano. And I actually did that one time. And as soon as I got under there, I had my little Polly Flinders dress on. And I went under the piano, and she was so angry because she said, I didn't mean you. I meant David Green behind you. So that made her even madder. But that was our punishment, was to get under the piano.
Sounds better than Northeastern Grammar, because we had the white bench and the threat of a switch. But no one, I don't think, ever went there because they were so afraid that they might be seen on the bench or getting switched. So we never.
Yeah, Ms. McFadden, she had a rattan
That's
switch.
what I heard.
Yeah, and then you put your hands out like this, and then she hit them.
I don't think so. Do you think she ever did?
Yeah, she did.
She
She
did?
was. She was not. She was mean. She was.
Oh, I thought she was a kind, nice.
Oh yeah, no. Well, you didn't talk to people who came before us. She did have a reputation, and she kept it. But that was how it was those days.
But I remember lining up in front of her office because we were immunized in school then. And
Yes.
we'd have to stand there in a long line quietly waiting to be shot at by Miss Murch.
Yeah.
Do you remember Miss
Yes.
Murch? Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, what a great memory you have.
No, Miss Murch. And you didn't dare cry or anything. Then you had to go back to your classroom shaking. Did you get shots at school?
No, I did not get shots in school simply because my mother did not. She would ask us when we came home with a little slip of paper, would you like to get jabbed with a needle? So naturally, I'm the oldest of 7, and all of us said, no, we don't want to. So she signed the paper, and that was fine and dandy. We were very fortunate, we thought, until we decided to pursue our education. And then we didn't have any of these shots, so we had like 20 of them. But back when I went to school, there was no PCP, doctor that you went to. You went if you were bleeding or you had some horrible injury, but other than that, you didn't go and have your yearly checkups.
No.
And when we got our, I believe it was smallpox vaccine before you were able to go to school, they usually gave it to you in your left arm, and mine didn't take. So they did it on my thigh, and that still didn't take. So finally they said, just let her go to school. Even though she's 5 years old, let her go to school, we'll do it later. In the meantime, my sister went to school and had her vaccination, and it took. Well, we must have been playing around as kids did, and I touched her vaccination by mistake and put my hand here, and I vaccinated myself. Well, back when you didn't have a doctor to go to, my mother didn't know quite what to do with me, because the next morning I woke up and I had this huge thing on my lip.
Oh my goodness.
So she laid me on the couch and she brought in the milkman, because he should know everything. He is the gentleman, and he has 8 children, so he should know what to do with me. So he came in and he looked, and I have no idea, you need to take her to a doctor. So finally we did see a doctor, and I believe it was Dr. Brennan.
Oh,
It
yeah.
was.
Yeah.
That's right.
And he said she's vaccinated herself. So I thought, that's great. Now I'm in school legally, I'm all set. But in the 3rd grade, whoever the teacher was made us point to our vaccinations. So I went like this. She immediately told me to get into the office because you're lying. I said, but this is my, go to the office. So I went to the office called my mother. Yes, that's her real vaccination. All right, get out of here and go back to school. So
At least they didn't send you under the piano again.
No, I didn't have to go under the piano. But I know all about the vaccinations now, and you can vaccinate yourself.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, I remember in 5th grade, I think, did we get the polio shot in 5th grade? And
Yes.
I was at Northeastern Grammar, and Miss Carlson was my 5th grade teacher.
Oh.
And do you remember the coat rooms? So
Yes.
every classroom had a narrow coat room with hooks on both sides of this narrow room. And that's where you came and hung up your coats and put your boots under them and all and that. So I was the one that was too scared to get a shot in the arm, and so they were going to give it to me in my thigh. But of course, that couldn't be done in front of all the class. So into the coat
Into
room.
the coat room.
I'll never forget that. I can still see it, feel it. I was 10, yeah, in the coat room. And Miss Carlson, she pulled up my dress and I pulled my panties down and the doctor came in and gave me that shot. So,
That's what,
yeah.
we even had to go up to the Oliver Ames Junior High School to have our teeth checked. That was a requirement also,
Oh, yeah.
and cleaned annually. That was quite an event. We went up to the big school.
And that was the yellow building.
Yep.
Yep. And so we went there in junior high, Arlene and I, right?
Yeah.
Now,
Well, you would've been
and you
there.
went there too, right?
I did go there, but first I went to the 5th grade, and the 5th grade was at the VFW hall where we're going to have this reunion tomorrow.
Okay, and that was called the Pequannock School.
Quanticut School, and the teacher there was Mrs. Johnson, and I do not remember too much about it, except she was adamant about who slammed the bathroom door. That's all she ever asked. And I do recall her saying that we had to bring a note home from our parents. We have the parents write the note and give it to her to allow us to climb trees at recess. I never did climb a tree, but everybody
You
had
had
to have
permission.
a note. We had to have a note. And I just thought how strange that is nowadays. You'd never get that.
No, the liability would be,
Right.
right, yeah. So when you walked downtown, Arlene, did you, I know you had a sister who was mentally challenged.
Mhm.
And what was the experience that you had with her in terms of the community acceptance?
Well, quite amazingly, my middle sister was a Down syndrome, and we were very fortunate because until she started school, probably at age 8, maybe a little later, there was no special needs class. There wasn't such a thing, and she was fortunate enough to be in the first class. And of course, where did they put that? In the basement, next to the boiler room. And she had this most wonderful, wonderful teacher who stayed with the class from, I don't know, I think she probably was there for 25 or 30 years. And, the kids they weren't mainstreamed at all. But eventually she moved on to a program up at the high school, and that was more integrated. But she still didn't have a diploma of graduation. She just had a certificate of graduation when she turned 21. This was in the late 50s, so times have really changed. Programs are much more oriented towards kids that have problems or limitations. But I must say that Mrs. Goldstein was a saint on earth because my sister was able to read, write, swim. She traveled. She worked at my mother's nursing home. When she finished her public school, and I think she had a very fulfilling life, considering there was some challenges.
Sure.
But the community was great.
Yeah, and I remember seeing adult children with challenges on Main Street, with my mother, and I remember they were never treated any differently from anyone else. And so we were like a village, in a way. We looked after each other. And I know that mothers who were not my mother would feel completely free to chastise me if I did something that wasn't considered proper. And so
And the teacher was always right.
Yes, the teacher was
Absolutely.
always right.
No matter what you did, you were wrong. Teacher was right.
Right.
No question.
Right. And then you got double trouble when you went home because then the
Worse
parents stuck up
worse
to
when
the
you went
teachers.
home.
That's right. Yeah.
But there was the safety factor. I mean, there was no fear of anything.
Right.
It just
And
was nothing.
I think we had, because of the safe, we enjoyed the independence
Yep.
that a lot of children today don't have.
Oh, you'd take off on your bike and just take off and go off for the day. I remember we'd go down to the brook. We made a dugout canoe. We were gone, and until 3 or 4 in the afternoon, and no one would think of calling your mother because you didn't have a cell phone. But I mean, you didn't even worry. You had to be home for supper, and that was.
And your mother didn't worry, and your father didn't worry.
No,
No.
We had 3.5 acres in our backyard. That was our vacation / after school. You
Yep.
go out and play, and when the lights comes on, you get home.
Get home.
And nobody worried. There was no phones. Nobody.
No. And kids played together. I mean, we'd have after supper basketball games out in the middle of the street. And you'd have high school kids, little kids, middle-aged kids, and when the mother called or rang a bell, you went home. But there was no separation of the ages. I mean, kids really got along with each other. And you'd learn from the big kids, and they were very caring.
And now I remember I lived at the end of Seaver Street, right next to the woods, and walked through the woods. And back then, at the clearing, we could see the town dump. Now that is where the senior housing is. But I remember we installed a baseball diamond or a softball diamond, and we even got chicken wire. We made a back, what do you call that back thing? And so we'd go down and have pickup games, and they were kids from the neighborhood of all different ages, and nobody cared, you know, as long as you could bat a bat and catch a ball and run like you know what.
Yep.
So
we used to go ice skating at Knapp's Pond too, and we'd have to walk down there.
Yeah.
Back then, you didn't have nice white skates. You wore whatever they had for
Might be
hand-me-downs.
black even.
Mine were black. They definitely were black. And
I
they
bought my
didn't fit,
father's.
and I had to wear like 6 pairs of socks in order to fill them out. But we went down there and we ice skated, and the lady next door could see a bunch of us doing that, and she'd make hot chocolate. And we thought nothing, you know, we'd go over there and have a nice little drink and then walk home.
Wow.
It was quite different.
Very different.
The thing that was kind of fun, there were all kinds of delivery things. Now today we think of Amazon dropping stuff off, but we had a meat man that went around the neighborhood. We had Cookie Callahan
with the crackers and
Full
cookies.
of Brush Man,
Oh, yeah. The rag man.
the
milk-
Rag Man, and a knife sharpener,
And the milkman.
and the
The
milkman.
milkman.
I know.
Which one
Cushman
did you
baby.
have?
John Moline.
Oh, you did. Okay.
Langwater Farm.
Yeah. So we had Mr. Gooch
Oh,
up
okay.
on Bay
Yep.
Road.
And then Mr. Tufts used to deliver milk.
Yes.
Wasn't there Cushman's Bakery as
Yep.
well?
I mean, there were all these people
Things.
that would be
Right.
traveling around.
Harvey's Market.
Yep.
Mhm.
And we had newspaper drives, bottle drives.
Oh yeah.
Um,
I remember the newspaper drives because my dad had a trailer that, and he would go around and collect them. And it was our church, Lutheran Church's Brotherhood.
Yeah.
If you remember that. And then they would sell the paper.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, it was very community oriented.
Right.
Yeah.
So what happened when you left Easton?
When
Lela?
I left Easton.
Did you ever leave
Yes,
Easton?
I spent 1 year in Brockton, 2 years in Bridgewater, and then came back to Easton. It's sort of funny. I bought the house on Bay Road. My husband and I bought the house on Bay Road. And my daughter at that time was 6 years old, and she was going to attend kindergarten. So I looked up the bus route, and I put her out in front of the house, and the bus went sailing right by her. So I had a number, and I called, and I can't remember the man's name, but I called him, and I said, "Excuse me, the bus has gone by, and he's missed my daughter." And this real gruff voice, I think his name was Conceition, but I'm not sure.
Oh dear.
This real gruff voice said, "Listen, lady, if you think you can do any better, come on down here." And I said, "Well, I think I can." And that's how I started driving a bus.
Oh, good
Because
for
there was a
you.
lady down the street on Bay Road that was a bus driver. I knocked on her door and I said, "Will you teach me how to drive this bus?" And she said, "Yes." So
Good
for
for
17
you.
years, I drove a bus. And I drove many of the kids, my classmates'
Oh,
children. So there was never any discipline problem because I knew their parents. So I had a wonderful time driving
I
the bus.
bet you were good too.
I was a good bus
Yeah,
driver.
I bet you
yes.
were.
Yeah, it was a fun job, and being out back then, Bay Road was woods. There were cow pastures,
Yeah.
chicken farms,
Right.
and the only car we had, my husband took to work, so it left me with no way to how to get anywhere.
Mm.
And the bus served a wonderful purpose. I could park it in my yard, and I could take it anywhere I wanted, which I did. Any town, place in Easton.
Really?
Yes, I got a Christmas tree in there 1 year, and a bag of coal for the
Fringe
wood
benefits.
stove. Yes, it was a fringe.
Mm-hmm.
But I got all the kids to school and never had a problem. So that's
Wonderful story.
We need you back.
I don't know about the kids nowadays.
So Arlene, when you left Easton, where did you go?
I went to nursing school for 3 years, a diploma school in Jamaica Plain, and I just met some wonderfully great instructors, and they encouraged me to go on. And so I went to BU, got a bachelor, master's, and basically worked in the Boston area for a while.
Oh, you did?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you followed in your mother's footsteps.
Did? Yep.
And that's been a very rewarding career.
Yes.
Yeah.
Of course, I was majoring in maternal child health, and I wound up in geriatrics. So there was kind of a
It's big
twist
change.
there. Yeah, that didn't quite work, but yeah.
Yeah.
So variety of things.
Yeah. And so when you look back at growing up in Easton, what impact did that life that you enjoyed have on your future life? What impact did it have, whether in values or in drive or, can you point to anything that you think impacted your future life growing up here?
I think maybe you don't realize it till you're almost well into your life that you realize that we grew up in a wonderfully safe, accepting place with things that we didn't appreciate at the time, for sure. But I think as the more you get out and perhaps travel or just see other places, you realize that we had a lot of special things around us that we didn't realize. Freedoms, certainly. I don't feel that we had any prejudices.
No.
I think it was just a very accepting, caring community and safe.
So that caring and had a lot to do with your chosen profession, didn't it?
Absolutely. No, my children have all gone into caring professions, and they've pursued lots of things that were, I didn't realize they were absorbing when they grew up, but I think it's because we had, such a caring community, a supportive community to live in as children.
Yeah, and the independence, Lela, that you enjoyed, didn't that give you the confidence to drive a school bus, for example, or to be so outspoken as you are, and you're a wonderful storyteller. So, what do you see as the main contribution to your adult life that Easton gave you?
Well, I don't know if it was Easton, it was like my parents.
Okay, growing up in
My father
Easton.
instilled a lot, pennies, money doesn't fall off a tree. I can go on with all these quotes that I keep thinking in my brain that he said, But there were a lot of things. He grew up in a different era than I did. And, he definitely said children are to be seen and not heard. And I was that way until I became a senior. Finally, when I was a senior, I figured, I guess I'm going to graduate from this school so now I can say what I want. And now I haven't been quiet since. But it was some of the things that you brought up with. And I had a mother that wouldn't leave the house. I mean, she just wanted to stay home. And I thought, I cannot be like her. I don't want to be like her. I want to get out and do things. And I've traveled. I've been on cruises. I've been married twice. I've got 2 children. I've got 7 great-grandchildren. And I've lived a real productive life, I think. After driving a school bus, I decided I wanted to be a medical assistant. So I've worked in the medical field for 17 years. And I've enjoyed most of it.
That school bus was a good thing.
The school bus was a very good thing.
But
once
Lela,
I was determined to do it.
and
I did go to a party once. I'll never forget. It was a church thing, and this little lady from Germany came up to me and she said, "What do you work or do you just stay home?" And I said, "Well, I drive a school bus, but And she said, wow, you don't look like a school bus driver. So to this day, I really don't know what they're supposed to look like. But
Tough.
tough. Well, I was all of 90 pounds,
Yeah.
so I was tiny. And they just figured. And back then, when you drove a bus, it was standard shift.
Yeah.
And I remember taking my test at that time, and the man came in and he said, adjust the seat, get ready. And I said, well, I'm very nervous. I said, I think I'd rather have a baby. And he said, well, we need to determine exactly what you're going to do in order to adjust the seat. I said, all right, let's just drive this thing. So it was a challenge, but I was up for a challenge.
And you were, because I understand you were, how many years old were you when you went to that class to learn to be a medical assistant? And
38.
everybody, and they were all 18-year-olds. And how old were you?
38.
38.
Yeah.
And weren't you the valedictorian?
Yes, I was.
There you go.
Yeah. But I enjoyed doing that. That was something that I probably should have done many years ago, but due to family situations, I wasn't allowed to do that. So it took me a while to figure it out. And yes, I was pretty good at that. I figured it was a fun job, but it was rewarding. And
Yeah, well, don't you think now that we're in our 80s?
Hard to believe.
Yeah, I mean, hard to believe. But we still need to have a life of purpose. I think we still do. And I think that's why we're still around, don't you?
right.
Well, you just can't give in to small weaknesses. You have to just keep focused.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important to learn new things. I have just started to learn how to play mahjong, which is not an easy game, but I've actually won, so I'm going to continue. I've probably played it for 6 months, once a week, and it's finally getting into my head. But I think it's important to do some of these things, get out, socialize with people, and learn something new. Another thing, when I go to Florida, we play bocce all the time, and that's another fun little game.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think one other thing maybe that Easton taught me anyhow, we weren't big consumers. We were recycling. We did the things that now they're saying of all the things we should be doing, and we were doing it. It just came naturally. I think there were so many immigrant families that there wasn't a lot of flashy money, and the basics were stressed, even in terms of just diet.
And we all had chickens.
We had chickens. Some of us had
Pigs.
Yep.
We had 3 pigs and 100 chickens.
I mean, we didn't have gigantic loads of trash. People just weren't consumers.
Right. Do you remember that the garbage trash, like the vegetable peelings or whatever we had,
went into
right? What was it?
composting.
Yes,
I mean,
but that so if we had chicken bones or stuff like that, we separated that from like the paper goods.
soup.
And do you remember the big that were in the ground?
Yes.
And the guy would come every week and he'd pick up the
Yeah,
slop
and take it away.
and take it away.
Yeah, to the pig farm.
Yes, and I came across that on my property. I still have it. It's in the ground.
No.
I know where mine is. It's covered with grass and flowers, but it's still there.
And there's one family car usually,
Yep.
yes.
if there was a car.
Right.
Mm.
And there was a work ethics
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
were very, very important.
And don't you think that's because they grew up during the Depression? Oh, they
My father
experienced
used
the
to-
Depression.
Yeah, my father used to say, if you want something, you got to work for it. And I remember being 13 years old delivering newspapers because the girl across the street, who was a year older, decided she didn't want to do it
She
anymore.
gave you
And
the
I
route.
said, I'll do it. So I did it for 2 years. Every Friday, there was a little lady who had been a widow, and she dressed in black every day. And on Friday, she needed her coal hod filled with coal to keep her warm during the winter. So we'd go down in the basement with all these spiders and the dirt floor and fill the coal hog, and she'd give us a quarter.
Wow.
And then I got tired of doing the newspapers because we walked. You didn't ride a bike. You didn't have your parents drive you. You walked.
Mm-hmm.
And going by all these houses, the sports bus would come by, and all the kids in the bus would make fun of me because I was delivering papers and I was a girl. It was a boy's job.
Mm.
So I came home one day and I said to my father, I'm quitting the paper route. I'm not delivering papers anymore. And he said, it's not going to happen. And I said, why not? He said, you don't quit one job till you have another. So I thought, oh boy, what am I going to do now? Well, 2 doors down from me was a variety store. So I went down there, said to my mother, what do you need down there? She said, a pair of brown shoelaces. So, okay. She gave me a nickel, put it on the counter, and old man Peasley was there. What can I do for you, young lady? And I said, well, I need shoelaces. Okay, he gave them to me. Anything else? I said, yes, I need a job. Oh, a job? I said, yes. And he said, well, I've got a girl that works here now, but she eats peanuts and leaves the shells all over the floor. Look at the floor. And I said, oh, I wouldn't do that. He said, well, when could you start? And I said, in 5 minutes, I'll go home and tell my mother and I'll be right back. So I was 15 and a half, and I worked at that store for probably 2 years, every day after school, weekends, whenever he needed me. And then one day he said, how do you feel about running the store for a week by yourself? I said, oh, I could do it. I had no idea. I had to order supplies. I had to pay the purveyors that came, but I did it. And it was a pumping gas, checking oil. So for a whole week, I was 15 and a half, almost 16, but not quite. And I ran that store for one whole week while he and his wife went on vacation.
Wow.
Wow.
And that's what you wanted. Anything
you know,
in
and
your life?
that goes to the independence that you enjoyed and that you experienced. You just thought nothing of it. You
Right.
you know,
Well,
you
I
got on
wanted-
your bike, you went wherever you
I
wanted.
made 75 cents an hour. I needed that money.
That was
I
Yes.
wanted,
excellent.
yeah. Well, then I got up to $1 at that time. I had another job, but you didn't ask your parents for money, or I didn't.
No.
We didn't have,
Right.
awards or
Mm.
allowances or anything.
No.
Video games.
The allowance, my father used to say, the allowance you have is living in this house. That's your allowance.
Mm.
So you want anything else, you go out and you earn
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Now I used to babysit, and I
Yeah,
remember
yeah, too.
I was getting 15 cents an hour.
Mhm.
15 cents. And I just said, you know what? Everybody else is getting a quarter an hour. I'm going to go to these people and tell them, I'm sorry, but I'm not working for you unless you give me a quarter an hour. And they said, no. I said, okay, I quit. And yeah, but I remember I was giving Molly McNamara, my piano teacher,
Mhm.
on the corner of Pond and Maine,
Yeah.
that house? And
My
Piano
sister
room?
had her as a teacher.
who?
My sister.
Really, yes. So what did I pay? I paid her 25 cents an hour. So, that's that. Yeah. But she was doing it out of the love and, she wasn't doing it to make the money. She was doing it, because she loved it.
music.
And she loved it, and she wanted to share her talents. So,
In babysitting, you didn't just sit there like they do now on
No.
their phone.
Oh, no, you had
You
to do
did
the dishes,
and
Yeah,
do
you
the
did
dishes.
fold laundry,
Give the kids baths,
be
read
nice
them a
to
stories.
them, play.
And in the summer, they'd have a swimming pool there, and all the neighbor kids would come over. So you weren't babysitting for just two; you were
Picking
babysitting
up
for
all that mess.
a whole
yeah.
bunch of
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah. And how much were you getting an hour?
Oh,
Oh.
I don't remember. It wasn't much. 50 cents maybe.
I would say that was good.
That was good, 50
Yeah.
cents an hour.
Well, that was a good babysitter.
And now they're getting $20 an hour or something.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
If they want to work.
Yeah.
yeah.
If
yeah.
they want to work, yeah.
Mhm.
Well, this has been really interesting. We've had a lot of great stories, and growing up in Easton was a wonderful thing for you. You were very fortunate. I was fortunate.
We were.
We
Yeah,
were, and we have fond memories. And Arlene, you've remembered 4 times what I remember, which is great. You remember the names of teachers and things, and you too, Lela. Oh, I'm really impressed with you too. So
No, it was a good place to be.
Right.
it really was
You were
right.
fortunate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons that you came back for this class reunion. 63 years ago, we graduated. Imagine that. And
No,
No. It doesn't feel like 63
No.
years.
no.
And all we can say to you out there, younger, those of you who are 60 and so young, the next 20 years are going to go in a flash. So you better make good every single day. Enjoy the moments. Do lots of planning. Do the traveling that Lela talks about. I traveled,
Keep moving.
Arlene.
Keep
Yeah.
moving.
And
People-
Arlene just came back from 10 days in Portugal, where she was climbing mountains with a guide for 10 days.
Mhm.
Right. She survived.
I'm alive.
Yeah.
She's still alive, and that's why she's alive. And the other thing, being involved, Lela, you're so involved with everything, and you too, Arlene.
You have to.
And social engagement, the scientists tell us, creates longevity. So if you want to live to be 100 or more, continue to climb mountains, be socially engaged,
Learn new
and
things.
And learn new things.
and learn new things and have a purpose in life. And that purpose should be helping other people too.
And take care of your neighbor too.
Yeah,
Exactly. Right.
absolutely.
Well, thank you both, Arlene
Thank you.
Johnson Robinson and Lela Melendi Pierce, class of Oliver Ames, class of 1960. Thank you
Right.
for being my guest today. And for archiving, this will be archived with the Historical Society and the library so that future generations can understand what life was like in the 50s in Easton, Massachusetts. Thank you for watching. Hope you've enjoyed the program as much as we've enjoyed producing it. Until next time, be well.